Hey everyone, this is the Mind of Lilith, and thank you for joining me today as I take a deeper look into the most recent episode of Love and Marriage Huntsville, Season 5, Episode 15. I will not be doing a full episode recap as there are other content creators who do a great job covering the show. Instead, I'm going to focus on specific segments of the episode that I believe could be used as teachable moments for myself and the audience. Last week, I discussed the complicated dynamic between Martell, Arion, and Melody, and why Melody was triggered by Martell disclosing her COVID status to Arion. When Martell and Melody got back from vacation, Arion went on social media saying that Melody was double sick because she got COVID, and Martell accidentally called Melody her name. Arion would only know this if Martell told her. So the question I had was, did Martell do the right thing for the wrong reason? The right thing for the right reason, the wrong thing for the wrong reason, or the wrong thing for the right reason? And what was the right thing to do in this situation? Because of the CDC guidelines about disclosing if you have been exposed to anyone who has COVID, I stated that Martell was correct in telling Arion that Melody had COVID, especially since they have a young child together. But a lot of the viewers, including Miss Van, disagreed with me and said that Martell did not have to disclose who exposed him to COVID. To which I responded something like, the issue isn't whether or not, to me anyway, the issue isn't whether or not he disclosed who had COVID. The problem is that Martell never protected Melody from Arion in the first place. He fostered a toxic, dysfunctional, radioactive dynamic between these two women to maintain control over both of them while he was married to Melody. So now Arion feels comfortable disrespecting Melody. Martell should not be cool with Arion disrespecting Melody unless he still harbors resentment towards her. I have male friends who I've never had sex with, okay? Male friends who would defend me in my absence to people who felt like they could disrespect me, okay? Not a lot of them, because this is not, something that's common, but I've had male friends defend me in my absence, especially when someone was talking shit about me and lying on me. So, while Mel and Martell were arguing outside in this episode, he said, I'm not responsible for what someone else does. And Martell has been saying this to Melody for years. They argued about it in season 1, when Melody told Martell, when they were outside, I think they were at Kimmy's wedding. She said, you were supposed to tell this lady to stop talking about your wife. Don't talk about your wife. Melody basically said that Martell never protected her from Arion. And I believe it, right? So, Martell had no problem with what Arion was saying against Melody, because he was talking badly about his wife to Arion. Arion was following Martell's lead, and she treated Melody the way Martell treated Melody. So although Martell apologized to Melody for the things that he did during their marriage, he never apologized to Melody for what he allowed someone else to do to her, which was probably more painful for her and probably why she's triggered when she feels like people aren't being loyal to her. This could also be the reason why she felt some kind of way about Destiny and Martell's friendship and Destiny and Tisha's growing relationship when they were talking in the hotel room. Because, she found out that her husband of 10 years was talking shit about her behind her back to her enemy. If Martell had told Destiny or Tisha or Kimmy that Melody had COVID, it would not have been on social media, okay? They would not have used that information to hurt Melody. But because Arion is a pterodactyl, which is a bird with an alligator mouth, she was salivating at the opportunity to prey on Melody's energy by throwing jabs at her over a man who doesn't want her, who used her for sex for most of her 20s and will never claim her publicly because she reminds him of poverty and struggle. I think the audience was triggered by my commentary last week because the fact that Martell was trying to protect Melody's enemy and her baby from COVID in their mind meant that Melody was some sort of enemy. And I was saying that Melody was the bad guy in the situation. Okay? It was like Melody being sick posed a threat to the woman who was trying to destroy her. So some of Melody's stands believe that taking an objective or rational stance about such a painful and unfair situation somehow validates the wrong that was done to Melody. So if I were to say that Martell is right about anything, it automatically justifies how he treated her in their marriage. That is not what I am saying, okay? Martell does not have to be 100% wrong 100% of the time about everything ever in life for him to be wrong as hell about how he treated Melody during the marriage. Me saying that Martel was right to tell Ariane about the COVID situation is not saying that he was right for treating her like shit during their marriage. People need to stop listening with bias. Stop listening with your feelings, okay? So last week I said that Martel was right to disclose that he had been exposed to COVID. And Melody was also right for being triggered because of the toxic and abusive dynamic that Martel had cultivated between Ariane and Melody. This is why I mentioned many times before that Melody has PTSD. From my opinion, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist or a counselor, I'm just an astrologer with a gift for psychoanalysis, right? I mentioned that Melody had PTSD from dealing with constant psychological and emotional abuse from Martel. Even if Martel had the best of intentions and he made an honest mistake. Because of his track record and his history, Melody is very hypervigilant and sensitive to every perceived slight because she has been traumatized by Martel. He will have to take time to repair the trust between him and Melody, which he violated on every single level during his 5-year affair with Ariane, which was half of their marriage. Okay? Martel and Melody both have to take a step back, honestly and objectively assess the situation, their relationship, and treat the cause of their disease instead of the symptoms. Them avoiding triggers like a minefield is not working. They need counseling and therapy together and separately, okay? So Melody doesn't distrust Martel because of this one isolated incident. Martel has repeatedly failed to protect his ex-wife and the mother of his children from her enemy. But the real problem is, Martel doesn't see Ariane as an enemy. Even though she attacked his wife and disrespected his home where his children lived. Martel didn't say to Melody, your enemy is my enemy, and I'm going to protect your honor and your peace. He showed Melody he didn't have her back, and he couldn't even differentiate between her value and her enemy's value, which essentially put them on the same level. This was very painful to Melody again, because it was like he was telling her, no matter how much you do for me, no matter how hard you love me, no matter how much bullshit you put up for me, no matter how many kids you give me, right? No matter how much you protect me from my own inadequacies and how good you make me look to the public, you still don't mean shit to me. And this is very disturbing and triggering to Melody because I believe that is also how Melody's father made her feel when he would not answer the phone when she called him. Now let's stitch some things together, okay? Melody was a straight A student, hardworking, beautiful, intelligent, ambitious, a good daughter, but her father still refused to even acknowledge her. So she pushed harder, and now you have to see Melody. You can't ignore her, right? That's the way that she's crafted her brand and her image. You cannot ignore me. Here I am. However, on Martel's end, and I've said this before, Martel felt the same way about Melody. He felt like no matter how hard he loved her, no matter how supportive he was to her, to which Melody admitted herself, he felt like she was never satisfied with him, and he took that personally. When the problem is, to be honest, neither Martel and Melody are completely satisfied with themselves. Unless what? You guys can fill in the blanks with that, and I'll talk about that later. Unless what? Neither of them feel satisfied with themselves unless they're getting something from who, right? Okay, so the reason Martel couldn't differentiate between Ariane and Melody is because they both represent aspects of his identity that he has not reconciled. So let me go into my astrology bag really quickly, okay? Martel has a natal moon square Venus. Ariane has a natal moon square Venus. Martel's moon is square Melody's Venus. It is not a coincidence that Ariane, Melody, and Sheree all have Scorpio moons, which are in conflict with Martel's Venus in Aquarius. Ariane makes Martel feel good, like home-cooked food. But Melody makes Martel feel valuable, like he's important or worth something. So although Martel's mother loved him unconditionally, she couldn't make him feel valuable, right? To further this analogy, it's like Ariane feels like a hug from Martel's mommy, and Melody feels like a hug from Martel's father. It's a different level of acceptance and acknowledgement and love. The mother and the father. The father represents society in astrology, okay? So one is easier to please than the other. Mommies are usually easier to please than daddies. So Ariane represents what's familiar to Martel, and Melody represents who Martel wants to be, because what's familiar to Martel is pain, poverty, and neglect. Melody represents all of the honor and respect he's ever wanted as a child. Martel loves his mother, but she did not have what he needed to make him feel valuable or respected or significant or seen in society, which is very important for a Capricorn. So while Arion makes Martel feel comfortable enough to be himself, what if he doesn't like himself? What if he doesn't like who he is? Right? And this is where Melody steps in as a trophy wife. But she's not just a trophy wife, she's a boss. She's intelligent, she's fertile, she's alpha, right? Fun, outgoing, ambitious. And Martel can use her to hide his shortcomings in a way that he can't do with Arion. So both Melody and Arion make Martel feel secure, but in different ways, which is why he couldn't let either of them go. But I suspect that Martel got frustrated with Melody because he wanted to feel and see the real Mel, not money-making social media Mel. When Melody hid her true feelings, or she wears the mask, I think she may wear it inside the house too. We all wear masks, everybody does, right? And some people wear masks in the home and outside the home. So they're never really truly themselves, okay? So anyway, when Melody hid her true feelings and insecurities from Martel, it triggered his separation anxiety, which caused him to abuse her out of fear and desperation. But how could the real Melody feel safe with a narcissist like Martel? How can she feel safe with a man who can't take care of his business enough to get his builder's license? How can she feel safe with a man who cannot protect her from his mistress? I have a question. Do y'all think Melody lost respect for Martel when she realized he wasn't as ambitious as her? I'm just asking. Arion, on the other hand, has exaggerated emotional responses that make Martel feel like she needs him, which makes him feel more secure, but not socially acceptable, just like his struggling mother. I remember a couple years ago when Arion said on a recording something like Melody was fake and boring. And then at the last reunion, Marceau said that Martel is a totally different person when he's with Arion. And I think that he meant that Melody is so concerned with how she appears to other people, her brand, that she appears to be less human, which makes her a target for abuse and betrayal, no matter how much she does for other people. So essentially, and I'm just speculating here, this is what I'm thinking, and I could be wrong. Melody turned herself into a product for public consumption, and Martel needed Melody to do this. He needed her to objectify herself to satisfy his narcissistic ideations of the perfect wife and mother who has no identity outside of pleasing him. Okay, so Martel ended up treating Melody the same way she treats herself, like an object, like a product, like a brand. I'm not saying that what Martel did to Melody was right. I'm not saying that she wanted him to abuse her. Again, I'm not saying that she wanted Martel to abuse her. But we tend to attract people who treat us the way we treat ourselves. And because we're magnetic beings, we attract people who match our frequency. If we remember season 1, Melody referred to herself as a trophy wife, and Martel says she's not being much of a trophy wife if she's not pleasing her husband. So what is a trophy? A beautiful, shiny, hard, inanimate object that represents success and superiority and accomplishment. It's not a human being, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if Martel abused Melody to force her to show her true feelings, which she usually does when she's angry or sad. Now, why do I believe this? Because I've had it done to me, okay? I've had men tell me I was too perfect, too measured, too controlled, too composed, so they would intentionally do things to get a rise out of me. And the only rise they got out of me was me cursing them out or just cutting them off, or both, right? But anyway, if you see Miss Marlene and Miss Van, you can see Arion and Melody. Miss Van is very controlled, prim, proper, concerned with public perception, while Miss Marlene lets it all hang out like Arion. There is a possibility that Martel has moon opposite Pluto, and if so, Martel needs to see the soul of a person to feel secure. And like many toxic black men, or many toxic men in general, he will emotionally or psychologically abuse a woman to feed his craving for deep emotional connection by creating unnecessary drama. Women do this too. Women who are dysfunctional and broken and they thrive on toxicity, they will create drama in their relationships to get a response out of their man. Both men and women do this who are damaged, okay? So with Arion, Martel could be his loud, boisterous, braggadocious self. But with Melody, he felt like he had to present himself as an upwardly mobile, sophisticated, ambitious man to meet her standards. Remember when Kimmy and Tisha called Melody bougie in season 1? Martel probably felt the same way about Melody, which is why Ariane said that Melody was mad that she was no longer the belle of the ball when Martel started cheating on her. So when Martel and Melody separated in season 2, I remember feeling heartbroken for both Martel and Melody because they tried to do the right thing, right? They went to college, they got married, then they had kids, they built businesses, but unfortunately, being poor and Black in America leaves deep emotional and psychological scars that destroy relationships between Black men and Black women. Black men and Black women both want security, but we can't give it to each other. So we lash out at each other in frustration and punish the other for our weaknesses and failures because we cannot accept our own weaknesses and failures within ourselves. Why? Because in this society, you're punished for being weak and a failure or having issues or making mistakes. So Black men and Black women project their own insecurities onto each other. And even when we try to make relationships work, we have so much baggage from the trauma of being born in a society that it's hard for our relationships to prosper because we're trying to succeed our way or sex our way into happiness. And this is kind of what Solange was talking about in her song Cranes in the Sky, the coping mechanisms she used to deal with her depression and anxiety. Okay, a lot of Black women and men who were raised in dysfunctional or broken homes who have trauma, they use their relationships or their careers to compensate for a sense of emptiness, fear, trauma, anxiety, etc. All right. So the situation is such an emotional and psychological Gordian knot because Martel and Melody have the same shadow. But Martel uses relationships to run away from his trauma, and Melody uses her career and social status to run away from her trauma. In astrology, the 7th house of relationships and the 10th house of career are 90 degrees away, which creates a square of conflict. And because Pluto and Mars are involved in this conflict, it is complicated and painful and requires deep analysis and introspection on both parties. So the way that Martel seeks validation is very different from the way Melody seeks validation, but they're both looking for external validation. Earlier this year, I discussed Martel and Melody having Venus square Venus, which means that their love language is in conflict. In fact, their love language is conflict. Now, is this, an indictment against their character? No, because most of us, including me, have struggled with similar challenges, so I'm not going to judge them for that. I'm just acknowledging that Martel and Melody trigger emotions within each other because of emotional and psychological baggage that they came into the relationship with. But the toxic dynamic of their situation, their marriage, added more layers of trauma to an already complex situation. So what you're seeing between them is love and hate. And I feel like they hate that they were forced to not be together. They hate that their other issues was stronger than the love they had for each other, in a sense. And this is why the divorce was so bitter and nasty, because neither of them wanted to get a divorce. But like Martel said, Mel runs when things get hard. But Martel didn't make it easy to stay. Martel did not make it easy for Melody to stay. Martel, as a double earth, was trying to break her down and build her back up into who he wanted her to be. And Melody said, no, I'm not doing that. This situation, their relationship, is absolutely fascinating to me. It's fascinating because it pretty much exemplifies the dynamic that Black women and Black women have in society as a collective. There are mythical undertones to this relationships because Martel and Melody both represent archetypes, and they represent archetypes because of their they have a concentrated or focused manner of communicating and thinking and being. Some people have a very balanced personality. Martel and Melody don't have balanced personalities. They represent extremes in personality and behavior that is perfect for psychoanalysis. I really wish Dr. Francis had more sessions with them because it would have been really nice for them to go on that retreat with the rest of the gang, just to get an assessment of what's happening between them from an objective standpoint, okay? But yeah, anyway, no other man could hurt Melody the way Martel did, and no other woman could hurt Martel the way Melody did. And that is why they need to stay away from each other. Not because they don't love each other, but because the energy between them is so intense, courtesy of Mars and Pluto, that it's almost like they hate the fact that they can't be together. That's what it's feeling like to me. Melody's decision to leave Martel for good was a logical one. It wasn't an emotional one. She didn't leave him because she didn't love him anymore. or because she didn't want him anymore. She left him because she realized Martel had no intention of changing and that she wasn't enough for him. Not because she wasn't good enough inherently, but because Martel had his own issues to deal with that she could not fix. She could not love Martel enough to fix his problems, right? So back to the episode. Martel pulls up to Melody's house expecting to be invited in because Martel had extended this courtesy to her when she came over to his house and believed that since they were on good terms, quote unquote, she would allow him into her sacred space. I understand why Melody does not want Martel inside of her home physically, because a woman's home is her main source of comfort, security, and peace. And if that's out of whack or disrupted because of messy or unwanted guests, she's going to be anxious and uncomfortable in her own home, and that is a no-no. If I were Melody, I would not have invited Martel into the house. I just wouldn't have done it whether we were cool or not. He needs to be on good behavior for like at least a couple more years before I would even feel comfortable bringing him into my home. That's just me, right? So at the same time, I also think that Melody did not tell Martel she had an issue with him because of Arion, because I think that she wanted to confront him in person. And this is why she handed her children's bag to him with a smirk on her face. She knew that he would be bothered, which would open the door to another argument. She wanted Martel to know that she was feeling some kind of way without actually saying it, because she wanted him to care enough about her feelings to inquire further, like a cat and mouse game. On an energetic level, this is like foreplay, okay? Energies don't have sexual organs, so they interact to create new energies, and this is the basis of astrological interpretation. Mercury does not have a vagina, okay? And the planet Jupiter doesn't have a penis. But when their energies interact, which is called an aspect, they have an effect on the earth and everything within the earth. So Martel and Melody's energies are kind of copulating, even when they're not. And that's why there's still electricity between them, even 2 years after the separation. Now, the strength of this connection ebbs and flows like everything else, but because Pluto and Mars are involved, they've chosen each other to help their souls evolve. Because as I said before, the reason Martel and Melody stayed married for as long as they did is because their shadows are compatible. Martel never felt like he was good enough for Melody because of his childhood trauma, and Melody struggles with facing her pain because of her childhood trauma, which I'll discuss another time on Patreon, because I don't want petty ghouls and trolls to use this information to hurt Melody. I might even say nothing because, yeah, I'll figure it out. But anyway, Melody has the tendency to conflate her thoughts with her emotions. Now, why do I say this? During their argument about Arion and COVID, Melody brought up the fact that Martel still tells her that he wants her. I don't think that had anything to do with Arion. I think it's because she felt some kind of way about Sheree. Or it could be both. It could be both. And here comes the complicated part. Listen closely. Because Martel told Melody, you've been with too many men I know for me to want to be with you. And that hurt Melody so much, it shut her mouth. She couldn't say nothing. She had to take a step back and walk away. So here's the complicated part. Now listen closely. Here's the complicated part. Melody always knew she had the one-up on Arion because Martel never claimed her publicly. She knows what Martel wants in a woman. And if you guys remember, Melody was furious with Martel when he acknowledged his side baby while he was holding Melody's fourth child, Sugar Mama. Happy birthday to her. Her birthday was yesterday, I think. And he was using Sugar Mama, his baby with Melody, to legitimize his side baby with Arion because he is so concerned about public perception. So at this point, it's been a few weeks and Martel has been massaging Melody's heart and mind, making her feel good about their relationship, reminding her that he still misses her, all the while he was courting another woman. So Melody rightfully felt like she was being manipulated because even though they're both dating somebody else, or they're both not interested in each other anymore, right? She subconsciously liked being put on a pedestal by Martel as the only one who he could ever really love so deeply. This is me speculating here, okay? I may be wrong, but I think she liked it. Most women would like that, right? Most women want to feel vindicated as the woman who got away, especially if that man treated him like shit. So yeah, he was putting her on this pedestal in his mind as the only one who he could ever really love so deeply. And narcissists do this to avoid getting into relationships with other women. So what they'll do is they'll pine after one woman for 40, 50 years And then for 40 years, they will sabotage every single relationship with a woman because it's not that one woman they put on the pedestal. They do this to avoid the responsibilities of making a commitment to anybody, okay? That's what narcs usually do. All right. So Melody felt like she was being manipulated because even though they're not together anymore, no woman wants to feel like she's being replaced. And Melody said that Martel told her if he couldn't be with her, he wouldn't be with Arion. Okay, so Melody knew off the rip that Arion was no competition, in spite of everything he did. But with Sheree, there's two things going on. Melody knows that Martel likes fame, money, and social status, which Sheree brings him. And Melody almost feels like Martel was manipulating her with friendship to manage his feelings for Sheree, almost to keep his feelings for both Sheree and Melody intertwined in this narcissistic triangle. So Martel was receiving supply from Melody under the guise of friendship so that he can maintain a relationship with Sheree, or vice versa. Martel may want to be friends with Melody only because he thinks he found someone to replace her. So now it's time to stop abusing and pestering her. This is complicated for Melody because she knows that Martel is triangulating with her, but can't truly articulate why she's upset about it, because then she would have to admit that she cares about how he feels about her relative to other women. So it's not a coincidence to me that Martel wanted to be nice to Melody after he started dating Sheree. Okay, I could be wrong, but I think that Martel started to be nice to Melody, or cordial or humane towards her, once he started dating Sheree. Okay, so what narcissists do is they use the energy from one relationship to support another, and this is called triangulation. Martel's friendship would be a way for Martel to keep Sheree in line and not truly commit to the relationship. If Sheree or Arion has a problem with Martel, he'll just call Melody and tell her how much he misses her and wishes they would get back together. If Melody gets on Martel's nerves, he would call Sheree or Arion and have sex with them, and then, with this arrangement, he never has to deal with his feelings or take accountability for his actions. But if Martel is being cordial and respectful to Melody, why does it matter what he's doing with another woman? This is a huge problem because Melody needs to believe that she's moved on. And it's still a line from Funky Dineva. Is it me? But like in every conversation between Melody and Martel, they have to keep bringing up or reminding each other that they don't want each other anymore, or they're not interested, they're dating somebody else. I find that absolutely hilarious, but not surprising, because it seems as if they have a double whammy of Neptune conjunct Mercury. I haven't discussed that aspect as much as I discussed Pluto, Mars, and Venus. Neptune aspects to Mercury has a very spellbinding or hypnotic effect on the person. I believe Arion's Neptune is conjunct Martel's Mercury, so she confuses him. He can't see things clearly or see her clearly at all. Like when she talks to him, she makes him feel like the man, like everything he's wanted to feel. But then the reality is that socially or financially, she's not on that level. So he'll keep her around because the way she speaks to him is the way that he wants to be spoken to as a man, right? And that keeps him befuddled. But it also makes their relationship a great narcissistic bond. Martel's Neptune will square Arion's sun, and Arion's Neptune is conjunct Martel's sun and Mercury, I believe. So he can't see her clearly. She has a spell cast over him too, which is why he was willing to lose so much for her. He still doesn't want to be with her. I'm not saying that Arion or anybody who has Neptune aspects does candle magic or root work or spells. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the influence of Neptune makes things appear to be what we want them to be and not what they actually are. And so Martel's Neptune, I believe, is also conjunct Melody's Mercury. So he was able to convince her of anything. Neptune conjunct Mercury is a great aspect for therapy and healing, right? They were very supportive to each other. They shared their dreams with each other, Martel and Melody. That's Neptune conjunct Mercury. But this is also an aspect of deception because Neptune, again, deals with projections. They were projecting their fantasies and ideals onto each other. Martel, Melody, and Arion. All three of them were doing it, right? And so once Saturn entered Capricorn, which was conjuncting Melody's Neptune and conjuncting Martel's Mercury, she had a watershed moment. It was an epiphany. Oh, snap. This person is not who I thought they were. I still love them because of the memories we share together. I don't want to divorce them, because I still love them and they're the father of my children, but he's not who I thought he was. So Martell and Melody have to keep reminding themselves that they're not together anymore because it's easy for them to get sucked into the same dysfunctional patterns of behavior. Because like I said in the beginning, neither of them actually wanted to get a divorce in the first place. All right, I'm gonna leave it there. If you want to order your own personal astrology or tarot reading, you can go to my website, fill out the order entry form. Please be detailed. If you're ordering a reading, please give me as much information as possible. Do not write 1 or 2 sentences because the planets, signs, houses, and aspects have hundreds of significations for each of them. So it's like, if you want me to be more accurate, you have to tell me more about your story so I can help you more. Like going to the doctor. If you go to the doctor and you say, I got a headache, the doctor's not going to give you aspirin. The doctor's going to interview you, ask you how long you've had the headache. They'll do an MRI or a CAT scan if necessary. They'll take your blood pressure. They'll talk to you. They'll look at your eye, right? They'll examine your body. They don't just say, oh, your eye hurts, here's an aspirin. That's not what they do. So you guys have to treat it the same way. When you fill out the order form, just be as detailed as possible. Don't write a whole story, but at least a paragraph about why you're contacting me. So I can narrow down some of the significations in the chart to be more targeted and focused, and I don't have to spend as much time constructing equations to come up with the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem is usually in the question. So if you give me a question with enough context, I can use your chart to help you figure out the answer, okay? All right, I look forward to reading your feedback. Please like, share, and subscribe. Happy holidays. Christmas is in a couple of days. I don't celebrate Christmas, but for those of you who do, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you all. I will speak to you soon.